Good morning, everyone. My name is Rami, and I look after international partnerships for Snapchat. And my dad always wanted me to be a doctor. This is the closest I've ever been, the Royal College of Physicians. So somebody take a photo of me. I'm really going to make use of this. Cristina, Sky needs no introductions, but tell us a bit about yourself and what you do for Sky.
I'm Director of Content at Sky News. I've been there for 2 years. I was at ITN for about 20 odd years before that. And as Director of Content, I'm in charge of the production of all of Sky News' content on TV, online, on apps, on social media platforms, and on radio. We provide the news for about 350 independent radio stations. So it's very interesting, you couldn't get a job with actually probably more different kinds of platforms to be production involved. But at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's all about one thing, and that's telling stories.
And that's an amazing segue into stories. Stories is a format that Snap invented a number of years back. I remember as vertical video viewing was first talked about at Cannes, one of the main questions from both storytellers and the advertising world was, will vertical continue to exist? Is this a format that is relevant? You're producing a ton of content in vertical, so before I ask you to tell us a bit about what you do, shall we play the video and take a look?
Yes.
I have felt like, oh my God, maybe I'm gay.
We were like, oh, okay, yep, men will do that, women will do that, right, got it, good.
This is one of New Zealand's darkest days.
Blood is spitting on me, splashing on me. And I'm thinking, oh my God.
I'm a daddy by day, vigilante by night, innit? I've got children. Even if it means I'm indirectly protecting them, then I will continue to do it.
Incredible. And so with consumer behavior shifting so much, how is the strategy of Sky changing, and why partner with Snap?
We just, like other broadcasters and news providers, we obviously expanded into the digital space probably about, 8 or 9 years ago before I came to Sky. And of course, there's lots of different platforms out there, all competing. And people sort of say, TV news is dead, but it isn't dead. Still millions of people watch it. But we're very keen, obviously, to be... One of the things that Sky is well known for is innovation and being on the front foot. And so we have come up with a strategy for our social media. At the end of the day, all our content adheres to the same brand values. The fact we are regulated on the TV by Ofcom actually is quite it gives them some brand hygiene, if you like. In this whole era of fake news, a phrase I hate, we are a trusted brand, and we're very keen, and for us it's really important that the same sort of way that we tell our news and tell our stories is kept by the same rigour for television as it is for all other platforms. So, we don't actually have to adhere to Ofcom regulations on our products on Snap or whatever, but we choose to because it's part of the brand trust. And so our partnership with social media, we kind of changed our strategy a couple of years ago, and now we've decided that basically a piece of content, posting a piece of content in social media has got to do 2 of 3 things. It's either got to bring us a new audience, take our product to a different audience. It's either got to showcase our original journalism, or it's got to make some money. And it's got to do 2 of those 3 things now. Whereas before, I think a lot of companies were just posting everything out there, just trying to get reach. We're trying a different strategy. And what's worked very well with Snap as a partner is we've stuck to our brand values, which are, everyone knows, what does people think of Sky News for? They think of breaking news. We want to be the best and live breaking news publisher, whether that's on Snap, whether it's on Facebook, whether that's on television, whether that's on our app. That's our aim. We want to reach new audiences with our journalism. And we want to keep innovating how we present our news. And what's been really interesting is that some of the techniques we've been using with vertical video for our digital products are kind of creeping into some of our television storytelling. So I think that's really interesting. And what's worked for us is, with Snap, is that we have, building on our kind of core values about being live, about showcasing original content, we have been able to kind of, so we have one of our products for Snap is a breaking news edition, which does really well. We were the first people to do that. And believe it or not, Brexit does quite well for us on some of our break. We've had 2 breaking news editions that have done really well on Brexit. And I think that's going to carry on. We were also the first people to go live at a news event for Snap. So we did the Royal Wedding, which did very well for us. And we launched some shows. So you saw a couple of clips there. We have a TV show called Hotspots, which we make for Sky News and Sky Atlantic. And we wanted to repurpose it for digital audiences. And it worked really well with Snap.
What is really well, Christina? What is really well?
Well, incredibly, last week we put out an edition about a story that Stuart Ramsey, our correspondent, had filmed for the TV show about people trafficking in Mexico. And until, I think yesterday, it was 2.9 million people around the world to consume that, 1.4 million of them in North America.
A single episode?
Yeah, a single episode, which for us is fantastic and is, way higher than would have been consumed on the TV platforms. So we're taking our strategy, if you like, is taking our premium content and finding new audiences with it, showcasing that original journalism, and, there is some financial payback as well.
As an industry, we love to kill things. So, as we say, news may be dead, or TV may be dead, or linear may be dead. One of the points about Snap is that the feed in itself is curated. So there are human beings that are picking who are the partners who will appear on the right-hand side of the app. And so unlike other platforms, it's not an open for all environment. And so it doesn't promote as much, or it doesn't face the same challenges that other platforms may be facing, where their task is a little bit bigger, where they're trying to maybe organize the information across that exists across the world. The question I wanted to ask you is, as you think about your strategy in how you talk to an admittedly younger audience on Snap, 76% of the audience of Snapchat in the UK is over 18. We see about 13 or over 13 million daily active users on the app. That's a big audience that you can tap into with content. But how do you think about adjusting or changing the tone? How do you make sure that you convey the Sky brand as it deserves to exist, but also at the same time take into account that they may be 13 or 14 years old?
Obviously, when you're making any product, you think about the audience, don't you? And so you think, is this content suitable for my audience? Is this content going to be, is my audience going to be interested in this content? But what we've adhered to is a kind of set of core values, which are about being very honest, being very open, and being 100% accurate with the facts. And so we don't really change the content. We just change the way we tell the story. Again, that Hotspots episode was something that was made for television. We haven't changed it anyway. All we've done is basically put it in vertical and put some captions on it. So we're not really changing what we do. Another series that was just shown there is a show we're doing for you called Divided, which is probably topics that wouldn't necessarily go down with our TV audience, because our TV audience is older. And they are sort of more, it's about identity politics, I guess, and that's probably not something that the Sky News average TV viewer would be interested in, but it is something that is doing really well for the younger audience, and has been doing really well for us to kind of 18 to 34-year-olds, and actually, crucially for us also, providing us with a more female audience, which we don't do so much on TV. So it's to answer to your question, it's just keeping the same values to all our journalism, but maybe doing some kinds of stories that wouldn't necessarily play out, but with the same standards.
And we found the same thing. So as we worked with brands, one of the things that we don't recommend to our partners is that they adjust their brand image or think about a different brand that is facing a different demographic. As a brand portrays itself on a different platform, where we've seen most success is when you're really being true to your brand and just taking into account that this audience may be a 13-year-old. They need a little bit better explanation, but don't condescend, because they'll pick that up very quickly.
Look, any of us who are parents in the room know how embarrassing it is when we try and dress like our kids, And if we, as broadcasters or creators of content, try and do something for the youth audience, I think that's the way to kill off your business, frankly. You need to know your audience, but you need to address them that's true to your brand. As you said, if you start trying to change your brand according to who you think you're addressing, you're throwing your brand away at the end of the day.
So you've done a lot with Snap. You've done a publisher story, which is a digital magazine format, audiovisual, published every single day. You've done a number of shows with us, which are video-based, somewhere around the 5-minute mark, and they're published on a weekly cadence or more. You reach more than 7 million people monthly on Snap across all of your properties, and that's pretty sizable reach. What have you learned in working with Snap, or what were you surprised by?
I was surprised by how well some of the, what I call more traditional stories have done. I mean, I could not have, when my colleague told me how some of our editions have done on Brexit, I actually couldn't believe it. I'm sure everyone in this room has their own different views on Brexit, but would you have thought that the Snap audience would be interested in Brexit? But yeah, they were. That to me was the most surprising thing. And actually that spurred us on to carry on delivering kind of mainstream news stories. So yes, we do the divide, we do the gender politics, we do the kind of how to find a woke partner, all that kind of stuff, but actually staying true to our values, and our DNA at Sky News is breaking news and quality journalism. Staying true to those actually delivers an audience, even if you think the news subject is not one that the youth necessarily want. And it goes back to that thing about staying true to your brand, and that's what I've been most surprised by.
And so, taking that and thinking about just the show's product in itself, Snap launched over 100 shows in Q4 across more than 8 markets. Monetization was always a big question that obviously were asked by partners, and we take pride in the fact that the product came with monetization on from day one. The question that is probably on the minds of any broadcaster in the room is, do you make money with that content?
There is a revenue generated from it. I'm not going to go into figures. You don't want me to. These people probably do, but I'm not going to. Look, at the end of the day, we don't give our content away for free, so it's got to give us something back. So as I said before, it's got to fulfil 2 of those 3 things. Is it taking us to a news audience? Is it showcasing our original journalism? And is it making us some money? If it does one of those things, it's not good enough. It's got to do 2 of those things. Is Snap making us loads of money? It's making us some revenue, which is increasing, which is good. I think we were up.
Looking at the number.
Yeah, no, only percentage, don't worry. So our revenue's increased by 18-19% last year, so that's great. But we're not, unlike other outfits who are really struggling at the moment, we're not reliant on that income. Sky News is a service that Sky has decided to fund, and it appears across all sorts of different platforms. The money is still in television advertising. I don't think anyone's cracked yet the digital revenue as a one-line source of income. So the fact that we're not reliant on it, I think actually puts us in a stronger position. That's not to say you don't want to make more, by the way.
Okay, I'll take a note of that. And so you were talking about how the learnings from storytelling on mobile have been adapted by your teams elsewhere. Can you tell us a bit more about that? How's that happening?
What's really interesting, so the hotspots episode that I talked about just now that kind of had 2.9 million people, the correspondent on that is a guy called Stuart Ramsey, who actually, he and I started in our first job together about 30 years ago. And he is a dyed-in-the-wool, old-fashioned, kind of, battered war correspondent. And he, like a lot of other people at Sky News, when we started doing output on our digital platforms and social media, we're very kind of sniffy about it. And they've come to realise that it's not only that they're really excited, because there's no way Stuart would get 2.9 million people watching his product unless we were doing it this way. So I think what's been really interesting is that the cameramen and the correspondents have really embraced this. And the cameramen are, there used to be a thought, I think, probably about 15 years ago, that everything on a digital platform had to be shot wonkily on an iPhone and badly, and that you didn't need cameramen anymore. You could just, we could all be citizen journalists. Yeah, there is a place for that, but our cameramen can shoot in a way that actually works well on the big TV screen and on the mobile screen. And our cameramen are really, really excited by all of that. And, I'm married to one. It takes a lot to excite a kind of 50-year-old battered war correspondent cameraman. So I think that's been really interesting for us. And as I said, the people who are creating the content are excited by innovation and technique as much as they were 20, 30 years ago. So I think, watch your TV news screen, see on the big screens, and see how some of the methods and some of the storytelling techniques appear that you might have seen on your mobile appear on the big screen. Because we're all magpies, right? We all pick ideas and try them out. And the other thing that's been great for us on digital platforms is that idea of experimentation. Innovation at Sky is in our DNA. It's one of our values. We always want to be on the forefront, whether it's, you know, we were one of the first broadcasters to broadcast the news in HD. The Royal Wedding broadcast on television last year was in 4K. It's the first time a live event had been done like that. It's in our DNA, experimentation, and the digital platforms give us the opportunity to do that, because you try something, you know, if it doesn't work, then you just don't try it again. So that's, you know, that works well for us.
And probably to make use of that advantage, that you need to be structured in that way, right? So this team can't be an isolated team sitting somewhere in a basement who do nothing but vertical.
No, one of the things we did about 2 years ago, we were working on plans just when I arrived at Sky, and then a year ago we moved into a new newsroom. And our newsroom is one big room, and the digital production teams are physically linked to the social media platform teams, who are physically linked to the television platform teams. And in the middle is what we call the news gathering teams, the home desk and the foreign desk. And you know, I'm beginning to start a project where there's much more swap between people who work on TV, people who work on digital, people who work on social media, and we're beginning to get a bit more of that going on. But no, I mean, crucially, you've got a set of resources and you divert them to what you think at that time is going to be the right thing to do. It might be in 20 years' time, I don't know, that Snap, God forbid, it doesn't exist. So we'll try something else. It's about having a workforce that's really flexible. And, you know, I'm not naming any other companies, but there are companies that have hired like loads of kids out of university, had great startups to provide a certain kind of content, and then all of a sudden that content isn't wanted for by that particular digital platform anymore, that social media platform, and suddenly you've got kids who are in there like, you know, 23, 24, and they're facing redundancy. So I think what's been successful for us is having a workforce that's adaptable and flexing them and steering towards the bits of the business that work or are developing.
What are you most excited about this year?
This year, an end to Brexit. I don't think there'll be one. It's only the beginning. What I'm most excited about? I don't know. I think we've got some really good opportunities at Sky. One of the people speaking before me talked about what happens when your brand gets swallowed up. We're not being swallowed up. Comcast has bought Sky. But I think that there's a real kind of excitement there for me in working together with NBC. And I think NBC News and Sky News together are going to be the biggest global independent supplier of news. And I think that's for me, that scale's really exciting.
Last question, what advice would you leave broadcasters here with?
I would say be flexible and be adaptable. Don't put your eggs in one basket. Try things out. Don't be scared to try things out. I think the fear of failure is something you need to kind of put away. Because if you don't innovate and if you don't try things out, you will die. Not literally die, obviously, but you will, as companies, you will die. It's about being adaptable. And I think we've shown that the British public is ready to try stuff out. And if you don't succeed straight away, then try again.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cristina Squires.